The shove came without warning. In the narrow galley of a first-class cabin, a flight attendant planted both hands on a black man's chest and sent him crashing into the lavatory wall as stunned passengers gasped. He hadn't shouted. He hadn't threatened anyone. He had only asked for water. Veronica Vance believed her uniform made her untouchable. She believed authority lived in her badge and her seniority. What she didn't know, what no one in the cabin realized yet, was that the man she had just assaulted wasn't powerless. He was a federal judge. And as he reached for his phone, the fate of the entire aircraft, the crew and her 20-year career, was about to be decided in a single call. The Chicago O'Hare tarmac was a sheet of gray ice whipped by a wind that rattled the windows of the terminal. Inside the cabin of Atlantic Regal Airways, Flight 909 bound for Zurich, the atmosphere was supposed to be one of exclusive luxury. The first-class cabin, with its soft leather lie-flat seats and ambient lighting, was a sanctuary. Or at least it was supposed to be. Veronica Vance, the purser for the flight, adjusted her scarf and checked her reflection in the galley mirror. She was 45 sharp-featured and wore her uniform like armor. She prided herself on keeping her cabin pristine. She had a sixth sense for trouble, or so she told herself. In reality, Veronica had a sixth sense for prejudice. She categorized people the moment they stepped through the boarding door. High value, low value, and doesn't belong. At 4:15 p.m., the last passenger for first class boarded. Veronica's eyes narrowed instantly. The man was tall, broad-shouldered, and black. He was wearing a dark grey oversized hoodie, loose-fitting joggers, and beat-up Timberland boots. He carried a battered leather duffel bag that looked like it had survived a war zone. He didn't look like the CEOs or diplomats who usually occupied the pods in the front. He looked, in Veronica's estimation, like a problem. She stepped into the aisle, blocking his path before he could reach seat 1A. "Excuse me, sir," Veronica said, her voice dripping with that saccharine sweetness that barely masks hostility. "Boarding passes are being checked at the door. Economy is to your right through the galley." The man stopped. He looked tired. Deep bags hung under his eyes, and he hadn't shaved in a few days. He looked at Veronica, his expression unreadable. "I know where economy is," he said, his voice a low, growly rumble. "I'm in 1A. Veronica let out a short, incredulous huff. She didn't move. Sir, 1A is a reserved global premier seat. It costs $12,000. Now, if you're looking for row 41, I can direct you, but you are blocking the flow of traffic." Behind the man, a well-dressed businessman in a suit tapped his watch impatiently. The man in the hoodie didn't raise his voice. He didn't argue. He simply reached into his pocket. Veronica flinched instinctively, stepping back as if he were reaching for a weapon, and pulled out a crumpled boarding pass. He held it up. "Marcus A. Thorne, seat 1A. Veronica snatched the paper from his hand. She scanned it, her eyes darting back and forth, looking for the error, looking for the word standby or staff travel. It wasn't there. It was a full fare-paid first-class ticket. The machine must have glitched. She muttered loud enough for him to hear. She thrust the ticket back at him. "Fine, take your seat. But that bag," she pointed at his duffel, "is too big for the overhead in this cabin. You'll have to gate check it." "It fits," Marcus said calmly. "I've flown this plane before. It fits in the locker. I am the lead flight attendant, and I am telling you it does not fit." Veronica snapped, her voice rising. "Do not argue with crew members, sir. That is a federal offense." Marcus looked at her. For a second, a flash of steel appeared in his dark eyes. He took a slow breath. "If it doesn't fit, I will check it. Let me try." He stepped around her, his shoulder brushing the wall, to avoid touching her. He lifted the bag and slid it effortlessly into the overhead bin. It fit with room to spare. He closed the bin with a soft click and sat down in 1A without another word. Veronica stood there, her face flushing red. She felt the eyes of the businessman behind her. She felt foolish, and she hated him for it. "He thinks he's special," she thought, storming back to the galley. "Drug money has to be, or some rapper. Well, he's going to learn that on my plane, money doesn't buy respect." She grabbed the passenger manifest tablet and scrolled to 1A. No frequent flyer status listed. No employer listed. Just the name, Thorne M. Nobody, she whispered to her junior flight attendant, Jessica. He's a nobody who got lucky with a lottery ticket. Watch him. I don't want him disturbing the other guests. Jessica, a younger nervous girl, looked at Marcus. He had put on noise-cancelling headphones and closed his eyes. He looks quiet, Veronica. Maybe we should just serve him. I decide who gets served and when, Veronica hissed. He can wait. The plane pushed back from the gate, the engines whining to life. The captain, a veteran named Miller, came over the PA system. Ladies and gentlemen, we're currently fourth in line for dicing. It's going to be a bit of a wait on the tarmac, probably about 45 minutes before wheels up. Please sit back, relax, and our first-class team will be coming around with pre-departure beverages shortly. Marcus Thorne shifted in his seat. He was exhausted. He had just finished a grueling 6-week trial in Chicago involving the RICO prosecution of the Vanelli crime syndicate, one of the most dangerous organizations in the Midwest. He had been living in a safe house for a month. He hadn't seen his wife in D.C. for weeks. He was flying to Zurich for a strictly confidential judicial summit, a cover for a debriefing with Interpol. He just wanted to sleep, but his throat was parched. He watched as Veronica moved down the aisle with a tray of crystal flutes filled with champagne and sparkling water. She stopped at seat 1B, the businessman. "Champagne, Mr. Henderson," she cooed, flashing a bright professional smile. "Lovely." "Thank you," Veronica Henderson replied. She moved to 2A, then 2B. She meticulously served every single person in the first-class cabin except seat 1A. She walked right past Marcus, looking straight ahead, the tray balanced on her hand. Marcus waited. He thought perhaps she was coming back. 5 minutes passed. 10 minutes. The cabin was getting warm as the plane sat on the tarmac waiting for the descing trucks. Marcus pressed the call button. A soft ding echoed, Clear's throat, in the cabin. In the galley, Veronica heard it. She rolled her eyes. She was chatting with the pilot of a deadhead crew who was riding in the jump seat. "He's ringing," she scoffed. "Probably wants a refill on a drink he never got." "You didn't serve him?" the deadhead pilot asked, raising an eyebrow. "He was sleeping," she lied smoothly. "I didn't want to disturb him." The bell rang again. Ding. "Ignore it," Veronica said. "I'm doing the manifest check." Ding. Ding. Marcus wasn't trying to be annoying, but he was dehydrated and the heat in the cabin was stifling. He took off his headphones and turned in his seat. He could see Veronica in the galley, laughing with the other pilot. He unbuckled his seatbelt and stood up. Strictly speaking, the seatbelt sign was on, but the plane was stationary, the brakes were set, and they hadn't moved in 20 minutes. It was common practice for passengers to stretch or use the lavatory during long tarmac delays. Marcus walked toward the galley. He was a large man standing 6'4". When he loomed in the doorway of the galley, the laughter stopped. "Excuse me," Marcus said, his voice deep and polite. "I've rung the bell 3 times. I haven't received any water, and it's very hot in the cabin. Could I please get a bottle?" Veronica spun around, her face twisted into a mask of outrage. "Sir, the seatbelt sign is on. You are required to stay in your seat." "We aren't moving," Marcus said. "I just need some water. You are creating a safety hazard." Veronica stepped forward, entering his personal space. She was running on adrenaline and bias. She saw a large black man standing over her, and she decided to play the victim. Clear's throat. "You are being aggressive. I need you to sit down right now." "I'm not being aggressive," Marcus said, his brow furrowing. "I'm asking for water. You served everyone else." "I did not. You were asleep." She lied, her voice rising to a shrill pitch to attract attention. "Now back up. Mom, I just need a water." Marcus reached towards the counter where a bottle of stood. Then it happened. Veronica Vance, fueled by 20 years of unchecked authority and a deep-seated prejudice she refused to acknowledge, made her move. She didn't just block him. Clear's throat. She lunged forward and placed both hands on Marcus's chest. With a surprising amount of force, she shoved him backward. "I said get back," she screamed. Marcus caught off guard, and wearing slick boots on the galley floor stumbled back. He caught himself on the wall of the lavatory, his shoulder slamming into the plastic with a loud thud. The first-class cabin went dead silent. Mr. Henderson in 1B dropped his magazine. Jessica, the junior flight attendant, gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Marcus stood up straight. He brushed off the front of his hoodie where she had touched him. His face didn't show anger. It showed something much worse. It showed absolute icy calculation. He looked at Veronica. She was panting, realizing she might have gone too far, but doubling down. You charged me," she yelled, playing to the audience. "I was defending myself. Sit down, or I will have you removed." Marcus spoke very softly. "You put your hands on me." "I secured the cabin," Veronica shouted. "You assaulted a passenger," Marcus corrected. He didn't sit down. He reached into the pocket of his joggers. "What do you think you're doing?" Veronica demanded, panic creeping into her eyes. "Put the phone away. You can't record me. That's a violation of airline policy." Marcus didn't open the camera app. He didn't open Instagram. He unlocked his phone and opened a secure dialer app that didn't look like a normal phone interface. It required a thumbprint and a 6-digit code. "I'm not recording you, Ms. Vance," Marcus said, looking at her name tag. "I'm making a call. Who are you calling? Your lawyer? Your boyfriends?" She scoffed, trying to regain control. "We are wheels up in 10 minutes. No signal." Marcus held the phone to his ear. He looked Veronica dead in the eye. "I'm calling the director of the FAA, and then I'm calling the United States Marshal Service." Veronica laughed. It was a nervous, jagged sound. "Right, sure you are. Sit down." Marcus ignored her. The line connected. "Director Holloway. This is Justice Thorne. Authorization code Delta 9 X-ray. Yes, I have a situation on Atlantic Regal Flight 909. I have been physically assaulted by the crew. I am declaring this a code red security risk involving a federal officer. Ground the plane immediately." He hung up. Veronica stared at him. Clear his throat. "Justice," she whispered, the color draining from her face. The plane jolted. The engines, which had been whining in preparation for taxi, suddenly spooled down. The hum of the air conditioning cut out, replaced by a heavy, suffocating silence. The plane wasn't moving. And in the cockpit, Captain Miller's radio just exploded with chatter. 2 minutes prior, inside the cockpit of Flight 9009, Captain James Miller and First Officer Sarah Jenkins were running through the final pre-taxi checklist. They were annoyed by the descending delay, but ready to go. Tower Atlantic 909 requesting taxi clearance to runway 28R, Miller said into his headset. Usually, the response from Chicago ground control was immediate and rhythmic. Atlantic 909 taxi via Alpha hold short. Instead, there was a 3-second pause, a static crackle, and then a voice that sounded nothing like the usual air traffic controller. It was the frantic steel hard voice of the tower supervisor. "Atlantic Regal 909, this is O'Hare Tower Supervisor. Cancel taxi clearance. Hold your position immediately. Do not move. Repeat, do not move. Set parking brakes." Captain Miller exchanged a confused look with Jenkins. "Tower 909 brakes are set. What is the problem?" "We are clear of the ramp. 909, we have received a Level 1 federal ground stop order specifically for your aircraft. You are ordered to cut engines immediately. A tug is being dispatched to tow you back to gate K12. Do not open the cockpit door until instructed by federal authorities." Miller felt a chill run down his spine. In 30 years of flying, he had never heard a Level 1 federal ground stop. That wasn't for weather. That wasn't for mechanical failure. That was for terrorism or a national security threat. Jenkins, Miller whispered, "Get the lead FA on the interphone. Find out what the hell is happening back there." In the cabin, the silence was deafening. The engines had spooled down to a low, mournful whine, and then died completely. The auxiliary power unit APU kicked in with a distant hum, keeping the lights on, but the air felt heavy. Veronica Vance stood in the galley, her chest heaving. She stared at Marcus Thorne, who had simply sat back down in seat 1A, buckled his seatbelt, and closed his eyes. "He's bluffing," she told herself. He has to be. Who makes a phone call and stops a plane? Nobody. But her hands were shaking. She grabbed the interphone as it buzzed. Cockpit, she answered, trying to keep her voice steady. Veronica. Captain Miller's voice was tight. We've been ordered to return to the gate. Federal mandate. The tower says we have a security situation. Is everything secure back there? Do we have a hijacker? Veronica's eyes darted to Marcus. A twisted idea formed in her mind. This was her way out. If the police were coming, she had to control the narrative now. Yes, Captain. She, Clear's throat, whispered loudly, ensuring the front row could hear her. We have an unruly passenger in 1A. He became violent. He pushed me. He made threats involving the federal government. I believe he might be mentally unstable. Understood, Miller said. Airport police and TSA are meeting the aircraft. Keep him contained. Do not engage. Veronica hung up. She felt a surge of triumph. She had the captain on her side. Now she needed the passengers. She walked into the aisle, smoothing her skirt. She looked at Mr. Henderson in 1B and the elderly couple in 2A and 2B. She put on her best brave victim face. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, her voice trembling theatrically, I apologize for the disruption. As you saw, the passenger in 1A became physical with me. For your safety, the captain has decided to return to the gate to have him removed. I am so sorry you have to witness this. She looked at Marcus, expecting him to shout to argue, to give her more ammunition. Clear's throat. Marcus didn't move. He didn't open his eyes. He sat with the stillness of a statue. It was unnerving. Veronica leaned over to Jessica, the junior flight attendant, who was cowering near the closet. Listen to me, Veronica hissed, gripping the girl's arm hard. When the police get on, you saw him lunging at me. You saw me push him away in self-defense. If you don't back me up, I'll write you up for incompetence and ensure you never fly international again. Do you understand? Jessica looked at Marcus, then at Veronica's manic eyes. I do. You understand? Veronica dug her nails in. Yes, Jessica whispered, terrified. The plane shuddered as a tug connected to the front landing gear. Slowly, ignominiously, the massive Boeing 77 was towed backward, away from the runway, retreating to the terminal. Marcus Thorne opened his eyes. He looked out the window. Through the fog and sleet, he could see the tarmac near gate K-12. It was lit up like a Christmas tree, but not with festive lights. There were 6 Chicago police cruisers, 2 black SUVs with tinted windows, and a specialized armored truck with the insignia of the U.S. Marshal Service. Blue and red strobe lights bounced off the wet pavement, painting the fuselage of the plane in chaotic flashes of color. Veronica looked out the window and smiled. Good, she thought. They're here to take out the trash. The aircraft came to a halt. The fastened seatbelt sign flicked off, but nobody moved. The atmosphere in first class was thick with tension. Usually, the jet bridge moves slowly. This time, it slammed against the aircraft door with urgency. A heavy thud reverberated through the hull. Stay in your seats, Veronica commanded the cabin taking charge. I will handle the authorities. She marched to the boarding door L1. She checked the peephole. She saw uniforms. She took a deep breath, messed up her hair slightly to look more frazzled, and disarmed the door. She pulled the lever and swung the heavy door open. She was prepared to see airport cops, maybe a TSA supervisor. She was not prepared for the barrel of an AR-15 rifle. A tactical team from the U.S. Marshal Service SOG Special Operations Group flooded the vestibule. They wore heavy body armor helmets and balaclavas. Behind them stood 2 men in sharp suits and long wool coats. One was a high-ranking Chicago PD officer. The other was Chief Deputy Marshal David Strong, a man with a jawline like granite and eyes that missed nothing. Veronica gasped and stepped back, her hands flying to her chest. Oh, thank God you're here. It was terrifying. He's right there. Seat 1A. He assaulted me. And Chief Marshal Strong didn't even look at her. He didn't blink. He simply extended a gloved hand and physically moved her aside, sweeping her against the galley lockers with firm, dismissive force. "Secure the cabin," Strong barked. Two tactical officers moved past Veronica as if she were a piece of furniture. They took positions at the front of the aisle weapons at the low ready, scanning the cabin. "Clear," the lead officer shouted. Veronica was stunned. "Excuse me, I am the purser. I am the victim here. You need to listen to me. That man is dangerous." Chief Marshal Strong finally turned his head. He looked at Veronica with an expression of utter coldness. "Mom, you," Clear's throat, "are currently interfering with a federal operation. If you say one more word, you will be zip-tied. Stand down." Clear's throat. Veronica's mouth snapped shut, her world tilted on its axis. Why aren't they arresting him? Strong walked into the first-class cabin. The other passengers watched in awe. Strong stopped at seat 1A. Marcus Thorne unbuckled his seatbelt and stood up. He towered over the marshal, but the dynamic was one of mutual respect, not conflict. Strong snapped to attention. In the middle of the airplane aisle, the chief deputy marshal saluted. "Justice Thorne." Strong said, his voice ringing clearly through the silent cabin. "We received your distress signal. Are you injured, sir?" The entire cabin gasped. "Justice?" Veronica froze. The blood drained from her face so fast she felt dizzy. "Justice, as in judge." Marcus looked at Strong. "I'm fine, David. Sorry to pull you out on a Friday evening." "For you, sir? Any time," Strong said, lowering his hand. "We have the tarmac secured. We have a secure convoy ready to transport you. But first, we need to address the threat you reported." Marcus turned slowly, his eyes locked onto Veronica. She was pressed against the galley wall, trembling. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a primal fear. The threat, Marcus said, calmly pointing a finger at Veronica, "is right there. That flight attendant assaulted a federal officer in the performance of his duties. She denied me basic necessities, targeted me based on my appearance, and when I attempted to request water, she physically shoved me against the lavatory wall." "That's a lie!" Veronica shrieked, her survival instinct, overriding her common sense. "He's lying. He's just a passenger. I didn't know who he was. He came at me." She looked desperately at the other passengers. "Mr. Henderson, you saw it. Tell them. Tell them he charged me." Mr. Henderson, the businessman in 1B, slowly unbuckled his seatbelt. He was a man in his 60s wearing a bespoke Italian suit. He looked at Veronica, then at the marshals. "Actually," Henderson said, his voice crisp and authoritative, "I would like to make a statement." Veronica nodded frantically. "Yes, tell them." Henderson reached into his pocket and pulled out his iPhone. "I was recording," he said simply. Veronica stopped breathing. "I started recording when I saw how she treated him during boarding," Henderson said, addressing the marshal. "I found her behavior appalling, and I have a clear video of the incident in the galley. Mr. Thorne asked for water. She shouted at him, stepped into his space, and shoved him with both hands. It was entirely unprovoked." Henderson tapped his screen and turned the phone around. The marshal, Marcus, and Veronica all looked at the screen. The video was high definition. It, Clear's throat, showed Marcus standing calmly. It showed Veronica's face twisted in rage. It showed the shove. The sound of Marcus hitting the wall was audible. "Well," Chief Marshal Strong said, turning back to Veronica, "that seems definitive." Veronica stammered. "I was under stress, I thought." Veronica Vance Strong announced, pulling a pair of metal handcuffs from his belt. "You are under arrest for assault on a federal judge, deprivation of civil rights under color of authority, and filing a false report to the FAA." "No." She whimpered as the tactical officer grabbed her arms. "You can't do this. I've been with this airline for 20 years. I know the COO." "You can call him," Marcus said, speaking for the last time. "From the holding cell at the Metropolitan Correctional Center, I hear the reception is terrible." The tactical officers spun Veronica around. The click of the handcuffs echoed through the cabin. It was the loudest sound in the world. "Get her off my plane," Marcus said quietly. As they dragged a sobbing, struggling Veronica down the jet bridge, Marcus turned to the junior flight attendant, Jessica. She was shaking like a leaf, tears streaming down her face. Marcus softened his expression. "You," he said gently. "I'm sorry," Jessica cried. "She told me she'd fire me. I'm so sorry." "I know," Marcus said. "I saw her grab your arm. You're not in trouble, son, but you are going to be the witness that puts her away. Tell the truth. That's all that matters." "I will," Jessica sobbed. "I promise." Chief Marshal Strong turned to Marcus. "Sir, we have to debrief. But there's another issue. The airline. The gate agent just told me the district manager is sprinting down the terminal. They are terrified. They want to apologize." Marcus adjusted his hoodie. "Let them come. I'm not leaving this airport until I ensure this never happens to anyone else again." Also, Strong added, lowering his voice, "The media is here. Somebody live-reamed the police arrival from the terminal window. Black Judge grounded plane is trending in Hall 1 on Twitter right now. CNN is setting up outside Marcus." "Fine, let's turn this into a lesson." The jet bridge of Gate K-12 had been converted into a makeshift command post. The air smelled of jet fuel, damp wool and fear. Richard Sterling, the regional vice president of Atlantic Regal Airways for the Midwest, was not a man used to running. He was a man used to 3 martini lunches and firing people via Zoom. But tonight he had sprinted from the administrative tower to Terminal 3 in record time, his silk tie flapping over his shoulder. His phone had been blowing up for 20 minutes. The airline's general counsel in Atlanta had called him screaming. "Do you know who is on that plane, Richard? Do you have any idea it's Marcus Thorne? He's not just a judge. He's the guy who presided over the antitrust hearing that cost Delta $2 billion last year. He eats airlines for breakfast. Fix this now." Sterling burst through the door of the jet bridge, out of breath, flanked by 2 breathless legal aides carrying clipboards. He saw the scene, and his heart stopped. The first-class cabin was lit by the harsh glare of police strobes from the tarmac below. Chief Marshal Strong stood guard at the cockpit door. 2 other marshals were interviewing the businessman, Mr. Henderson. Clear his throat. And there in seat 1A sat Judge Marcus Thorne. He was sipping a bottle of water. Finally, that a terrified ground crew member had brought him. He looked calm, terrifyingly calm. Sterling composed himself. He smoothed his thinning hair and put on his customer service executive face. He walked over, extending a hand. Judge Thorne Sterling said, his voice oozing practiced contrition. "I am Richard Sterling, VP of Operations. On behalf of Atlantic Regal, I am absolutely devastated by what has transpired. It's a misunderstanding of catastrophic proportions." Marcus looked at the hand, then up at Sterling's face. He didn't shake it. "A misunderstanding, Mr. Sterling." Marcus asked, his voice low. "Is that what we're calling battery? We are launching an immediate internal investigation." Sterling rushed on, retracting his hand. "The flight attendant in question, Miss Vans, has been suspended pending inquiry. We want to make this right immediately." Sterling snapped his fingers. One of the aides rushed forward with a sleek black envelope. Sir Sterling said, lowering his voice, "In this envelope is a voucher for unlimited global first-class travel for you and your family for 5 years. Additionally, we are prepared to cut a check right now for $50,000 to a charity of your choice, provided we can sign a standard non-disclosure agreement regarding the specific details of tonight's incident. We want to protect your privacy as much as our reputation." The cabin went silent. Even the marshal stopped writing. Marcus slowly set his water bottle down. He stood up. He adjusted the cuffs of his hoodie. "Mr. Sterling." Marcus began, his voice projecting like he was back in his courtroom. "You seem to be laboring under a delusion. You think this is a customer service issue. You think I am a dissatisfied passenger who found a hair in his soup." Marcus stepped closer. Sterling shrank back. "Your employee didn't just differ in opinion with me. She profiled me. She decided that a black man in a hoodie could not possibly afford a seat on your aircraft. She stripped me of my dignity in front of an audience. And when I asserted my rights, she physically assaulted a federal officer. Do you know the sentencing guidelines for 18 U.S. Code, Section 111? Sterling swallowed hard. It's up to 8 years in federal prison, Marcus said cold as ice. "And you want to offer me airline miles?" Marcus laughed a dry, humorless sound. "Mr. Sterling, I don't want your money. I don't want your vouchers. I'm going to sue your airline." "Not for money, for policy." Policy, Sterling squeaked. "I'm going to file a civil rights lawsuit under Title VI, Marcus declared. I will subpoena your training manuals. I will subpoena Veronica Vance's personnel file, which I suspect is full of similar complaints from minority passengers that you swept under the rug with NDAs and vouchers. I will drag your entire corporate culture into the Southern District of New York, and I will keep you there until your stock price is trading for pennies." Sterling felt faint. He looked at the legal aides. They looked terrified. Now Marcus checked his watch. "I have a summit in Zurich in 9 hours. This aircraft is now a crime scene. I assume you have another 777 available. We have the flight to Munich at the next gate," Sterling stammered. "It's empty. We can swap the crews." "Do it," Marcus ordered, "and get these passengers moved. They've been delayed enough by your incompetence." "Yes, Your Honor." "Immediately, Your Honor." Sterling turned and screamed at his aides. "Get operations on the line. Move the Munich bird to K-12. Move! Move!" As the airline executives scrambled like rats on a sinking ship, Marcus sat back down. Clear his throat. Mr. Henderson leaned over from 1B. That, Henderson said with a grin, was better than any movie I've ever seen. Marcus allowed himself a small smile. "The show hasn't started yet, Mr. Henderson. The show is just beginning for Ms. Vance." 2 hours later, Veronica Vance was sitting on a metal bench bolted to a concrete floor. The holding cell at the airport precinct of the Chicago Police Department was a stark contrast to the first-class cabin she had ruled for 2 decades. It smelled of bleach and old vomit. The fluorescent lights buzzed with a headache-inducing frequency. She was still wearing her uniform, the navy blue skirt and blazer, the silk scarf with the Atlantic Regal logo. But the scarf was askew. Her tights were torn at the knee from when they shoved her into the squad car, and her mascara had run down her cheeks in dark, jagged lines. She wasn't crying anymore. She was in a state of shock. "This is a mistake." She kept whispering to herself, "I'm Veronica Vance. I'm a purser. They can't put me in a cage." The heavy steel door clanked open. Veronica jumped up. "Finally, I want to speak to the station manager. I want a woman," walked in. She wasn't the station manager. She wasn't an expensive corporate lawyer in a pinstripe suit. She was young, overworked, and wearing a rumpled grey suit. She carried a thick file folder. This was Elena Rodriguez, a public defender. Elena sat down at the metal table and didn't offer a hand. She gestured for Veronica to sit. "Miss Vance," Elena said, her voice tired. "I'm your court-appointed counsel for the arraignment." "Court-appointed?" Veronica scoffed. "I don't need you. I have the union. The Flight Attendants Union has a legal defense fund. Call my rep, Sarah Jenkins. She'll get me out of here." Elena looked at Veronica with a mixture of pity and disbelief. She opened the folder and slid a piece of paper across the table. "I spoke to the union representative 10 minutes ago. Elena said they are declining representation." What Veronica felt, the blood drained from her face. "They can't do that. I pay my dues." "Read the bylaws," Elena said, tapping the paper. Article 4, Section 2. Legal protection is voided in cases where the member is accused of a felony involving physical assault on a passenger or where the member's conduct is deemed a gross violation of civil rights. Elena leaned forward. Veronica, the union, saw the video, the one the passenger took. "They aren't going to touch you. You are radioactive. The airline has already issued a statement distancing themselves from you. You are alone." Veronica slumped back against the cold wall. "But it was just a push. He was aggressive. He was a federal judge." Elena cut her off. "And he wasn't aggressive. I saw the video too. He was standing there. You attacked him?" Elena flipped a page in the file. "Here is the reality check. The U.S. Attorney's Office is taking this case personally. They aren't charging you with simple assault. They are charging you with one assault on a federal officer. 18 USC paragrapher 111 felony, 2 interference with flight crew members and attendants. Ironically applied to you for disrupting the pilot's ability to fly safely. 3 deprivation of rights under color of law. The prosecutor is asking for no bail, Elena said softly. Because you are a flight risk, literally. No bail, Veronica whispered. I have to stay here until the trial or until you take a plea. I can't stay in jail. Veronica's voice cracked. I have a dog. I have a condo in Lincoln Park. You might not have the condo for long, Elena said brutally. Judge Thorne is filing a civil suit, but right now your biggest problem isn't the judge. It's the internet. Elena pulled out her phone and turned it around. YouTube was open. A video titled Karen Flight Attendant vs. Federal Judge Instant Regret had 4.2 million views. It had been uploaded 3 hours ago. The thumbnail was a freeze frame of Veronica's face, twisted in ugly rage, her hands on Marcus's chest. You're trending worldwide, Elena said. Everyone has seen it. The airline stock dropped 4% in after-hours trading. There is a petition with 200,000 signatures demanding you be banned from aviation for life. Veronica stared at the screen. She saw the comments rolling in at light speed. She messed with the wrong one today. The way she looked at him, pure racism. Glad she's in cuffs. Bye-bye pension. Veronica put her head in her hands. The bubble of superiority she had lived in for 20 years. The bubble that told her she was the queen of the cabin, that she could judge and belittle people based on how they looked, had not just popped. It had been incinerated. What do I do? She sobbed. You pray, Elena said, closing the folder. You pray that Judge Thorne is a man of mercy, because right now he holds your life in his hands, and frankly, if I were him, I wouldn't show you any. Meanwhile, at 35,000 FT Atlantic Regal Flight 909, the Clear's throat replacement aircraft was cruising smoothly over the Atlantic. Marcus Thorne was awake. He was working on his laptop reviewing the briefing notes for the Zurich summit. Jessica, the young flight attendant, walked by. She looked nervous, but relieved. She placed a fresh bottle of sparkling water and a small plate of warm chocolates on his console. For you, Judge, she whispered. And thank you for what you said to the marshals about me. Marcus looked up. He took off his reading glasses. You told the truth, Jessica. That takes courage when your boss is pressuring you to lie. Never lose that. I won't. She smiled. Captain Miller said the company is promoting me. They want me to be the new lead purser for the European routes. To, change the image? Good. Marcus nodded. Be the leader she wasn't. Treat the person in the hoodie the same way you treat the person in the suit. That's all the law requires. That's all decency requires. I will, she promised. She walked away. Marcus looked out the window. The moon was reflecting off the clouds below. A silver ocean of peace. He picked up his phone. He had one text message from his wife in DC. Saw the news. Are you okay? Proud of you. Don't let them off the hook. Marcus typed back. I'm fine. And don't worry, I'm just getting started. He closed his eyes, finally able to rest. But on the ground below the storm for Veronica Vance was only just beginning. 6 months later, the Everett M. Dirksen U.S. Courthouse in downtown Chicago is a fortress of glass and steel, a place where the mighty often fall. On this rainy Tuesday morning, the plaza outside was a sea of umbrellas and news vans. CNN, Fox News, and local affiliates were all broadcasting live. The headline on the Cherons was identical. The judgment of Flight 909. Inside room 1903 was packed to capacity. The air was stifling, smelling of wet wool and nervous sweat. This wasn't just a trial. It was a reckoning. Veronica Vance sat at the defense table. The last 6 months had ravaged her. The pristine, arrogant flight attendant who had ruled her cabin like a tyrant was gone. In her place sat a woman who looked 10 years older. Her hair, once perfectly sprayed into a helmet of authority, was now dull and pulled back in a severe fraying bun. She wore a cheap, ill-fitting grey blazer provided by her public defender. She had spent the last 2 months under house arrest, wearing an ankle monitor, watching her savings evaporate into legal fees. Across the aisle sat the assistant U.S. attorney, a shark named Marcus Sterling, no relation to the airline VP, who had built a case so watertight it was suffocating. And in the front row of the gallery, sitting with the quiet dignity of a mountain, was Justice Marcus Thorne. He wasn't the judge today. He was the victim. He wore a simple charcoal suit, his face unreadable. He didn't look at the cameras. He didn't look at the jury. He looked straight ahead, his presence sucking the oxygen out of the room. The star witness. The prosecution's case had been brutal. But the final nail in the coffin wasn't the video. It was the witness who took the stand at 10 West. H. The prosecution calls Jessica Miller. Veronica flinched. She looked up as the side door opened. Jessica, the young junior flight attendant who had been terrified in the galley that night, walked to the stand. She looked different now, stronger. She wore her new uniform with a pin that said, Lead Purser. She avoided looking at Veronica. Ms. Miller. The prosecutor asked gently, walk us through the moments. After the defendant pushed Justice Thorne. Jessica took a deep breath. The cabin was silent. Veronica, Miss Vance. She was panicking. She grabbed my arm. Grabbed it. How hard? Hard enough to leave a bruise. Jessica said, her voice wavering slightly, but gaining strength. She dug her nails in. She leaned close to my face and told me that if I didn't back up her story, if I didn't lie to the police and say the passenger attacked her, she would ruin my career. She said she would ensure I never flew international again. A gasp rippled through the jury box. And why didn't you lie, Ms. Miller? Clear's throat. Jessica looked directly at Marcus Thorne in the front row. Because when the marshals came on board, Justice Thorne looked at me. He didn't yell. He told me that the truth was all that mattered. In that moment, I realized I was more afraid of losing my integrity than losing my job. Veronica stared at Jessica, her eyes burning with betrayal. She mouthed the word traitor. Jessica didn't blink. The defense. A fatal mistake. Against the advice of her lawyer, Veronica insisted on taking the stand. It was a Hail Mary pass. She believed she could charm the jury. She believed she could cry on cue and make them see her as the victim of a scary situation. It was the biggest mistake of her life. Miss Vance? Her lawyer asked, trying to guide her gently. Why did you push him? Veronica sniffed, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. I felt threatened. You have to understand the world we live in today. Security is everything. He was a large man. He was wearing a hoodie. He had a duffel bag that looked suspicious. I was just trying to protect my passengers. I was scared. She looked at the jewelry, pleading with her eyes. Some of them looked sympathetic. Then the prosecutor stood up for cross-examination. He didn't look sympathetic. He looked like a wolf who smelled blood. Ms. Vance, the prosecutor, began walking slowly toward the witness stand. You stated you were scared because of his hoodie and his size, correct? Yes, Veronica whispered. Tell me, the prosecutor said, his voice deceptively calm. Does the Atlantic Regal Airways training manual state that passengers in comfortable clothing are to be considered security threats? No. But does it state that black men over 6 ft tall are inherently dangerous? Objection, Elena shouted. Badgering. Overruled. The presiding judge barked. Answer the question? No. Veronica snapped, her old aggression flaring up. The prosecutor walked back to his table and picked up a thick black binder. He dropped it on the podium with a loud thud. Ms. Vance, you claim this was an isolated incident of fear, but we subpoenaed your entire personnel file. 20 years of history. We found a pattern, a very specific pattern. Veronica's face went pale. Exhibit G. The prosecutor announced March 2018 a complaint from a Pakistani neurosurgeon. You refused to hang his coat claiming it smelled. You threatened to have him removed when he asked for his name. Is that correct? I don't recall. Exhibit H. The prosecutor flipped the page, his pace quickening. November 2021. A young African-American woman in seat 4A. You accused her of stealing a blanket from first class. You humiliated her for 10 minutes. It turned out she had brought the blanket from home. Clears throat. You never apologized. The prosecutor looked at the jury, and finally Exhibit J recorded just 3 weeks before the incident with Judge Thorne. A hot mic recording from the cockpit voice recorder during a conversation with a pilot. You were complaining about the New York route. The prosecutor pressed a button on his laptop. A crackly audio recording filled the silent courtroom. I hate that run. It's always full of trash. Thugs with credit cards who think they own the place just because they got a little money. They don't belong in my cabin. The silence that followed was absolute. It was heavy. It was suffocating. The prosecutor shut the laptop. He walked right up to the witness box, leaning in close. You didn't push Judge Thorne because you were scared Ms. Vance, he said, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper that the microphones caught perfectly. You pushed him because you felt entitled to. You pushed him because you decided he was a thug. You looked at a United States federal judge and all you saw was a stereotype to be crushed. Isn't that the truth? I was doing my job, Veronica screamed, cracking under the pressure, the tears now flowing from a place of pure panic. I am the purser. It is my cabin. No, the prosecutor said, turning his back on her. It was a crime scene, and you were the criminal. No further questions. The verdict. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. It was a speed that signaled only one thing. When they returned, the courtroom was electric. Veronica stood up. Her legs felt like jelly. She gripped the table so hard her knuckles turned white. The foreman, a middle-aged schoolteacher with stern glasses, stood up. In the matter of United States of America, there's Veronica Vance. The foreman read, on count 1, assault on a federal officer. Guilty. On count 2, interference with flight crew. Guilty. On count 3, deprivation of civil rights under color of authority. Guilty. Veronica let out a sob that sounded like a wounded animal. Her knees buckled, and her lawyer had to catch her. She looked back at the gallery, searching for someone to save her. She locked eyes with Marcus Thorne. He didn't look away. He offered a slow, singular nod. It wasn't forgiveness. It was an acknowledgement that the scales of justice had balanced. The sentencing 2 weeks later, the sentence was handed down. Clears throat. The presiding judge, a woman known for her leniency, looked at Veronica over her spectacles with zero warmth. Miss Vance, you held a position of trust. You were the face of safety in the skies. Instead, you weaponized your authority. You used your badge to bully those you deemed lesser. And when you finally met someone with the power to fight back a man of the law, you lied, you manipulated, and you played the victim. The judge paused. Society cannot function if prejudice is allowed to masquerade as security. You need a timeout, Miss Vance. A long one, the gavel raised. I sentence you to 36 months in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. You are also permanently placed on the federal no-fly list. You will never set foot on an airplane in the United States again. Bang. The sound echoed like a gunshot. 3 years no flying. Her career, her freedom, her identity gone. The aftermath. Real life karma. As the baifs led Veronica away in handcuffs, real ones this time, destined for a transport bus to the Federal Correctional Institution in Greenville. The reality set in. 1 year later, the fallout was absolute and devastating. Veronica Vance. Veronica served her full time. Prison was not kind to her. The first-class attitude didn't survive a week in a cell block. She was forced to work in the prison laundry for 12 cents an hour. When she was released, she was a felon with a violent record. She lost her condo in Lincoln Park to foreclosure. She lost her pension. Today, the woman who once looked down on low-value passengers works the night shift at a logistics warehouse in Indiana, packing boxes for online orders. She makes 15 toddlers an hour. She takes the bus to work. Every time she sees a plane contrail in the sky, she feels a sharp physical pain in her chest, a reminder of the kingdom she threw away for the sake of her ego. The airline. Judge Thorne followed through on his threat. The civil rights lawsuit settled for an undisclosed sum rumored to be in the range of $15 million. But more importantly, Atlantic Regal was forced to implement the Thorn Protocol, a mandatory, rigorous anti-bias training program overseen by the Department of Justice. The airline stock price took 2 years to recover. Jessica witnessed the young flight attendant who told the truth. She thrived. Jessica used her promotion to advocate for better treatment of passengers. She is now the director of in-flight training for the entire airline. She teaches new recruits one lesson above all others. Respect is the first rule of safety. She and Marcus Thorne exchange Christmas cards every year. Judge Marcus Thorne clears throat. Marcus returned to the bench. His reputation as a champion of civil rights cemented, but he kept the hoodie. He wears it when he travels now, not just for comfort, but as a test. He walks through airports head high, daring the world to judge him. And every time he sits in seat 1A, watching the clouds drift by, he remembers the moment he made that call. The moment he proved that dignity is clear's throat, not defined by what you wear, but by who you are, and that sometimes the biggest bullies in the world are just one phone call away from being grounded. Veronica Vance thought she was untouchable. She thought her uniform gave her the right to decide who deserved respect and who didn't. But she forgot the golden rule of life. You never truly know who you are dealing with. By judging a book by its cover, she didn't just lose her job. She lost her freedom. It took 45 minutes to ground a plane, but it took a lifetime to build the reputation she destroyed in seconds. Justice Thorne didn't just win a court case. He sent a message to every bully in the sky and on the ground. Respect is mandatory. Prejudice has a price. And sometimes karma arrives with a federal badge. What would you have done if you were in SAT 1A? Would you have kept your cool like the judge, or would you have lost it? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of high-flying justice, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell, so you never miss a story about karma hitting back hard. Thanks for watching, and remember, be kind, because you never know who you're talking.